bit earlier, we talked with our Peter Cook about if and when Congress will finally pass financial regulatory reform. Our next guest says Congress will get it done, but not necessarily this week. He also says the hard work really will not begin until regulators write the new rules to implement reform. Joining us right now to talk about all of this, Doug Elliott, former investment banker at JPMorgan Chase, now fellow at the Brookings Institution. Doug, great to have you back with Matt and myself. So,
thank you.
You do think it's going to get done, but again, you say the real work doesn't continue until later. Does that leave a lot of room for interpretation among regulators?
Well, absolutely. First of all, this will get passed. The political environment is the same as it was a month or two ago. The public wants something to get passed, and the Republicans don't want to be seen as too close to the bankers. So a few of them will vote for this, and it'll go through. In terms of the regulators, this is a big piece of legislation, the biggest since the Great Depression in this area. But because it's so big, an awful lot has had to be left to the regulators. So they're going to be making a huge number of critical decisions.
What do you think, Doug, about the efficacy of this bill if it gets passed? I mean, Simon Johnson wrote a column for us today basically decrying the entire thing as a failure and saying that none of it came out the way it was originally proposed, watered down.
Well, look, first of all, isn't that what you'd expect from any giant piece of legislation? And second of all, I've been quite positive because I think that plus the regulation that will follow will get us about 2/3 the way to where we ought to be. And in the real world, that's a very good result. This is a hugely complicated problem, large sector. Nobody knows the answers for sure, and you've got a lot of political pressures. So I think this has come out pretty well.
And, Doug, you say plus the regulation to follow, and we've heard from a lot of people, including the guys on the FCIC, that there will probably be more and more regulatory legislation after. Do you think we're going to see a few follow-ups to this in the next couple of years that try and make things whole?
Oh, absolutely. There will be a technical corrections bill, and then there will probably be some additional legislation, as you say, over the next year or two. But the bigger thing that's going to happen is the regulators have been given a lot of responsibility. There are over 40 specific studies they're supposed to do. They have to set up important new agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Financial Stability Council, and quite a number of other things they have to do. There's a huge list of to-do tasks for them.
Well, you know, Doug, let me ask you, because you know we heard this a lot over the last year or two here. Regulators missed it all the first time around. What guarantees, if any, do we have that regulators won't miss another financial crisis in the making? I mean, are there checks and balances kind of created into this reg reform to make sure we don't have what happened back in the fall of 2008 happen again?
You can't absolutely guarantee it. Markets are made up of humans, and so are regulatory bodies. Every large group of people missed this, even though in retrospect it seems to have been staring us in the face. So we can't go by that standard. But the bill does have a number of kind of automatic protections, and the regulators will add some. One of the biggest is we'll have substantially higher capital requirements. And the wonderful thing about capital is you don't have to guess what will go wrong in order for it to work. It's there as a buffer against anything that blows up.
You know, one thing I thought was interesting, people talk about too big to fail and say this doesn't address it, but some of our guests, including the mega bear that we just had on, Heis Groenewegen, have said he doesn't think that there's the political will to bail out another bank if it goes down. Do you think that's the case?
I think we would have a real issue in the next few years if we had to bail out a big organization. I think over time the sensitivity will go down, which I think is good, because in 30 or 50 years we might be faced with the choice of a depression or a bailout. I'd much rather do the bailout.
That's a really good point. Hey, Doug, thank you as always. We appreciate you finding time for Matt and myself. Doug Elliott, everybody, of the Brookings Institution.